谢谢大家回谢北北时间，我是大叔长。
我是大叔甲。
我们今天前一阵子讨论国外，我们现在看看自己在干嘛，所以就想说找一位其实还蛮多人认识的，这位是 Jerome Keating，那他是一个很有趣的人他在1980年代的时候就来台湾，那时候是为了台北捷运，他是做 technology transfer，然后后来有继续参与高雄捷运，然后后来在台湾变成一位教授，然后他现在还是住在台湾这样子。那我跟他算是老朋友了，所以就请他回顾一下这个30几年的他在台湾的老美在台湾的经验这样子。那也讲一下他其实有很多的著作，然后其实大部分其实都是跟台湾有关系的，就是从一个很在地人的角度来看台湾这样子，所以我们今天真的很感谢他来参与我们这个节目。那所以大叔甲，你觉得我们应该要注意什么呢？
我觉得他从一个在台美人这30-40年的近距离观察是有一些客观性的，虽然他也在地化了，所以他是这个算是 All Taiwan Hand。那我相信他也会有非常精彩的分享。然后我觉得重点就是说，因为他这30-40年从他1980年到台湾的时候，理论上那个时候应该刚刚解严而已。那这30-40年台湾变化也很大，那当他自己也观察到了一些就是近距离但是是长时间的观察，所以我们也很高兴能够请他跟我们一起做一些分享。那我们现在就进入节目咯。
Once again, we have an amazing speaker on the show today. We have Jerome Keating, a very good friend. Jerome, would you please say hi to our audience?
Hey, good to see you, YF, and hello to your audience. Always good to talk to you.
Great. Well, let's turn to Uncle Jia. So how do we start?
Well, thank you very much, Jerome. It's quite an honor to have you come in here and talk to us. Jerome, you've been in Taiwan for a long time, and you're still very young, obviously. You started your Taiwan watching career way back in 1988 when you first arrived. You obviously have had decades of experiencing in observing what's going on in Taiwan, and you have had the pleasure of meeting several of our democratically elected presidents. So please kick us off and just kind of talk to us about, when you first arrived and your first impression of Taiwan and how that is different from your initial conception of what Taiwan should be or was.
Okay, that'll be a good one. That arrival is very much still, even though it was back in 1988, is still very much set in my mind. I came in on the tail end of a typhoon.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
And it had just cleared the island. And I'll start giving you some humorous impressions. I transferred planes in Seoul, Korea,
Mm-hmm.
and I met a guy in the airport, and he was just coming from Taipei. And so I chatted with him, and I said, well, just give me an impression of Taiwan. And he said, motor scooters.
Yes.
Yes.
And it was.
And you had no idea what you meant, right?
I didn't. I found out soon after I got there because at that time, automobiles still were not the mainstream buy.
Mm-hmm.
The economy was still picking up, and people mainly used motor scooters.
That's right.
And in the early 90s, people started to buy cars, etc. So he was very accurate on that. And the other thing, so I come in and I get the bus from the airport to the hotel. And when I was growing up, and even before I came to Taiwan, everything in the U.S. was made in Taiwan.
Yes.
Right now, right now it's made in China.
Yes.
And that period was the period when things just started to move to China. The Taiwan industries just started to change and go over and produce in there. And so I always remember coming in on the bus from the airport to Taipei, and I'm looking around and saying, where are all the factories? I don't see any factories. Those are a couple of my memorable first impressions. Now, the other one, which is a little more serious, is that I came, as I mentioned that thinking that Chiang Kai-shek was a nice guy, defender of democracy, et cetera, I would have my epiphany, if you know, the term epiphany, as James Joyce uses it.
Yes.
And that would come in many different ways. One time, like I was at a party and, was chatting with a gal, and somehow I mentioned the name Chiang Kai-shek or something, and she got real angry, and like she was really pissed off and like almost cursing him, and I'm trying to think, where is all this anger coming from? This was early on, before I really found out the background. And then I realized that later someone told me, well, her grandfather had been killed by Chiang Kai-shek's people, and the White Terror, so very justifiable. And you had things like that. One of my co-workers on the MRT, we were talking about Taiwan, and he said, well, the last colonial regime we had here was the Kuomintang.
He doesn't mince words, huh?
That was another epiphany. So, as I say, I came in 88. In 92, martial law. Well, martial law was lifted in 87. So I came just on it was just lifted. In Zhang Jingguo had died in January, and Lee Deng-hui was president. He's just starting out. And as you'd mentioned, actually, I've talked to all 4 presidents of Taiwan that have been, I have stories on each of them.
Great, look forward to those.
Anyway, back to the garrison command is lifted. Lee Deng-hui listens to the wild lilies and does away with the legislative yen. The legislature is now elected by the people in 92. And this is what I call the beginning of the lifting of the Stockholm Syndrome of the Taiwanese. And I think I had mentioned to you, YF, that there is a survey that National Chen University does on Taiwan identity. And it starts in 92. And it would be good to really, I think, get that image. I'll send you the link and post it for your people to see how it consistently changed and the growing Taiwan identity from 92 to the present, 2022.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Yeah.
It's a yearly survey.
Right. Well, if I may sort of jump in here, I sort of would love to sort of get a perspective. As you mentioned, since your arrival in 88, there are several moments of epiphany. And I think one of the things that we're exploring is what's on the surface versus the undercurrent. And I think the example you mentioned, in the cocktail setting, social setting, and people, you sort of accidentally trigger this very painful memory. I mean, so how have you seen, sort of an interested observer that sort of the whole notion of Taiwan identity evolve over the years?
Okay, it was a gradual evolving, and of course, when I'm first here, I'm focusing, we're building the MRT. So
Of course.
No, you are here for a job, yes.
That's my main job. And
Yes.
my job is technology transfer. So I help our guys train their guys. So I'm working on both sides of the fence in a way. And another part of my job is to critique the first line that would open Matra, which is the brown line in Taiwan's MRT system. And, a lot of stories on that, but to try and keep it on the focus here that, so in one way, if you're doing your job and everything, things are going smoothly. But I do remember the garrison command walk the streets.
Yes.
And this is literally, they're walking, they have these silver helmets on, and there was always a lieutenant and two guys behind him, lower rank. And, it was just a very strong military presence. And if you went from Taipei to Xintian, I remember that on the bridge, there were guards on the bridge. And, and first it's only in hindsight, you look back and say, why the heck do we have guards on the bridge? It's like a fear of sabotage. And so there was this, in a way, element of fear and control that, was still in the minds of the government. And this is an interesting interplay between Li Dongwei and Zhang Jingguo, and in why he chose Li Dongwei and everything. And they're two characters, but and how each is balancing what they have to deal with. But and another interesting thing I do, you just little things would pop up that I was looking through some of the specs on the stations for the MRT. And I was looking, and one of them was, and it said, and the station must be able to, the underground station must be able to withstand a 500-pound megaton bomb.
Gosh. Okay.
Okay. 500 megaton. That's a big one.
500-pound maybe, but I'm thinking, what, this is an unusual specification for a station. It kind of made me think a little bit of London during the Blitz, where the people would go to the subways for security when the bombing was going on. So there were little things that, life would be going on as normal, but then there would be little things where this kept popping up. And like something even that I missed in a way in 1989, remember the immolation of Dang Nailong?
Yes.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
He burned himself. Yes.
Yes.
Now that happened, I was here then, but it was not covered much in the media. And, in a way, I didn't even at the time in 1989, when, you're doing your job and everything. And it, never even dawned on me or what's this all about? But, in hindsight, later on, as things got more free, in 96, when Li Dongwei has the president elected by the people, and we have more media, the government no longer controls all the media stations. You begin to find out a lot of other things in newspapers and all that.
Jerome, actually, speaking of the 1996 election, that is obviously a pivotal point in the history of Taiwan, at least modern history. Could you share with us some of the stories or your experience with, sort of meeting with him upfront and personal? I mean, what were some of the initial impressions of Li when you met him?
Okay, well, I met Li personally, actually, when he was retired.
I see.
And I was very fortunate. I had a friend who was, pretty good relations with him. And so I met with him personally in 2005. So
I see.
He has, this is, he retired in 2000.
Yes.
But I was already, by the year 2000, I was already quite, into Taiwan politics. I had gotten married in 92. I have a Taiwanese wife. She's since passed away, but
sorry,
we got married in 92. And so her family was what we would call green.
Understand.
And so I began to get some things from them, but and then began to slowly follow the politics. And I followed it more, after I left the MRT. I worked on Taipei and then in Kaohsiung on the MRT.
I see.
And then I was going to be on the high-speed rail until the Japanese got their contract.
Oh, darn it.
I never forgave them.
Well, I mean, not to be conspiracy minded, Japanese, maybe Lee has something to do with it.
Well, they were involved in the MRT as well. I met a lot of them. It's interesting, but getting back to you, how, so by the time I met Lee Dong-Wei, I was, pretty well, I had already started writing books on Taiwan and the history and that. So we had a good, but my impression of him is, and I would say that he was a little bit reserved, a little bit stoic in a sense. I admire the man, really, because in my mind, he probably, of all the presidents, did the most to make Taiwan what it is. He was a very pivotal person, and I think Chiang Jin-kuo chose him with wisdom. And I know, it was interesting in 2000, after when Chen Shui-bian was elected, and the KMT lost the election because they split their vote between Song and Lian Chan, but they blamed Lee Dong-wei.
They still do, by the way.
What?
they still do, by the way.
Okay, they still do. Right? Yeah. They, in my mind, I'm kind of getting a little off subject here, but in my mind, at that time, Lian Chan should have taken one for the team. I'll be honest with you. If I were KMT, and when you look at the results, Chen Shui-bian had 39%, James Sung had 36%, and Lian Chan had 23%.
Right.
Now, I'll give you some other interesting stories with Lee Dong-wei. I would love to know more. It's a shame, him and James Sung even, because Lee Dong-wei did away with James Sung's position as governor of Taiwan.
That's right.
Right. And, that was James Sung's main, he was a very popular governor. And in terms, James Sung knew how to spread the money around.
Yes.
And James Sung, he learned Taiwanese, etc. He could work on both sides, and in a way, both sides appreciated him. That's why I think he was so popular. And in some ways, Lee Dong-wei undercut him.
Sure.
And when he cut out that position, because it was like his main strength, and his main connection to all over the island. At the same time, Lian Chan was vice president at the time. And I compare Lian Chan with the person. Lian Chan is kind of the guy who says, "Who moved my cheese?"
That's a good one.
Lien Chan, was, I'm next in line for the presidency, and in one way he had a right to claim, but James Soong was more charismatic, and I think, probably would have made a better president. If Lien Chan would have taken one of the team for the team, Soong, I'm sure, would have been a straight 8 years president, because he knew how to play both sides. So, okay, now how do we, let me go back. I'm talking to Lee Dong-wei, 2005, he's blamed for the thing with, if you remember also at that time, very crucial thing, the Chongqing financial scandal.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yes.
The KMT, in a way, got back at James Soong by bringing that up right at the election. And in my mind, James Soong probably lost at least 4 or 5 percentage points at that point.
Right.
And that's why Chen Shui-bian got in with 39. Right. James Soong had 36. Lien Chan had 23%. Obviously Lien Chan was not the popular guy.
Yep. Well, I actually on this point, I find it. I think presidential politics it's sort of a national sport, not only in Taiwan but also in the U.S. Right? And I think in Taiwan we often think, when we talk about a president, we think of like the American examples, from George Washington, Lincoln, and then Bill Clinton, or to Trump and Biden and whatnot. I think Jerome, you sort of have a unique perspective, right? That I don't know how much involved you are with the presidential situation in the U.S., but just kind of looking from both sides. Do you find any particular profile, or like everybody just different? Tsai Ing-wen, the current president, she just actually I did meet her many years ago, before she became the president. She just seemed like a very sharp person. But do you have any thoughts on how do Taiwanese presidents stack up to the sort of the prototypical? Everybody's different, but to the American prototypical president, or are they doing a good job generally, or they're still behind?
Okay, let's say, of course, we've only had 4 since I've been here. So it's pretty easy. Lee Dong-wei, in my mind, did a tremendous job.
Sure.
He could have gotten away with making fewer changes than he did.
Right.
He could have had the president still elected by the National Assembly or something like that, but he doing away with the garrison command, getting rid of the Iron Rice Bowl legislators, making the president elected by the people. All these things helped contribute to, in some ways, as I say, releasing the Stockholm Syndrome, but also in shaping Taiwan's democracy, and moving it to this 2-party state. And remember in 1999, the Deutsche Welle interview, where Lee Dong-wei comes up with the 2-state theory, that between us and China, it's state to state, and everyone, wow, some people, don't say that word, but he did it, and Lee, in a way. We'll have to talk sometime, because the Taiwan presidents are always under pressure from the U.S. This is a topic I think we really got to deal with, in a way that, in a way, we always hear the thing, this kind of line that, well, how do you expect us to, defend you if you don't defend yourselves, or something?
Yes.
That's true in one sense, but it's bullshit in another. And I'll try and clarify that. And because the U.S., you know, we're going to have to go back to the San Francisco Peace Treaty on this.
It was the end of World War II. Yes.
End of World War II. The U.S. position at World War II ends in 1945. Okay. You know, 1952, the 1951, the treaty is made. 52, it is finally finalized and signed, etc. This is 7 friggin' years after the end of the war. You know, so, and you can't say, well, we didn't know. So that's part of it. And, you know, but also in that time, the Chinese Civil War is ending. Chiang Kai-shek loses. He retreats to Taiwan. And this will bring up the question, you know, in the treaty, Japan gives up sovereignty over Taiwan, but it does not name who gets the sovereignty. And some people hold that it still belongs to the U.S. military government. The official U.S. position is we are undecided.
We're not telling you guys.
It's 70, you know, over 72 years or whatever. You have to figure it, you know. But, you know, you know, how long? Like if you were waiting for a marriage proposal, you'd be. You know.
Yeah, talk about strategic ambiguity, huh?
I am not waiting by the phone anymore.
So, you know, anyway, okay. Well, let's direct back. We were on Lee Dong-Wei, you know, and this, you know, Lee Dong-Wei. So Lee Dong-Wei is very pivotal, and in my mind, of the 4 presidents, you know, the best. I'm partly because of the, you know, what he does. You asked me my impressions of. He was stoic, but he was straightforward. He was honest. You know, he wasn't a palsy-walsy type of guy at all. Of course, he's older than I am. And I was very appreciative that he gave me, it was about an hour one-on-one interview.
Wow, okay.
This is 2005. We're in his home. You know, he's already retired 5 years. He's been kicked out of the KMT. He's now the spiritual father of the TSU, Taiwan Solidarity Union. And he makes time for me. Interestingly enough, you know, he still had security there. And he had a couple of security guards there. I had brought my Taiwanese wife as a translator, and he had a translator with him. We didn't need them. We talked pretty freely, but that was just backup. And the one important question that really stands out in my mind, and I've said this before, and I said this in the article, you know, now you look back over the history, and I asked Lee Dong-Wei, because he told me when he was vice president, so he's chosen in 1984 by Chiang Ching-kuo. And therefore he's, you know, had 4 years roughly with Chiang Ching-kuo before Chiang Ching-kuo dies. Now, and another thing interesting here that's going to tie back in with James Soong. James Soong is the one that convinces, when Chiang Ching-kuo dies, James Soong and Chiang Ching-kuo says he wants Lee to succeed him. You know, he's a vice president, it's natural. But a lot of the KMT, old KMT, don't like Lee Dong-Wei because he's Taiwanese. He's not really, you know, he's not a Huaishan, right? And James Soong is the one that convinces the KMT to go with what Chiang Ching-kuo wanted. So in one way, yeah, this is an interesting interplay that I would love to see where it's sorted out. You know, that Lee Dong-Wei owes one to James Soong, which is surprising. Why then does he undercut his provincial governor position?
Well, you know, as we all sing in movie like Godfather, you know, sometimes one thing does not lead to another. But
wait, let me. I'm going to put one more little piece in this puzzle to keep you wondering.
Yes.
When Lee Dong-Wei has I can't remember, it's his 90th, 5th or whatever birthday party. Who is at the head table with him but James Soong?
Woohoo! They made up.
So I'll let you work on that. But let's go back.
Right.
Anyway,
well, actually, if I may, I have a feeling that we need to bring Jerome back because there are going to be so many so fascinating stories that we all want to learn more about. But I do, since we're talking about Li Tenghui and his pivotal role, I'd love to get your comment because, Jerome, later on, you obviously interact with a lot of college kids in Taiwan. And then so again, sort of, maybe the last question for this particular episode is, I'd love you to kind of comment on, are the kids, do they appreciate the level of complexities and the moments that, each generation kind of gone through as it relates to how they see themselves? Do they just say, hey, everything is fine, give me my iPhone and stop bothering me? Or do they have an appreciation of who they are in terms of the Taiwan identity, as it were?
I think they generally still have a good sense of who they are, and it's a developing sense. Remember, go back to in 1990, we had the wild lilies, okay? Now, the wild lilies will later give way to the, then we have the strawberry generation, the ones that they get the bad name, but they, that's given them by their elders. And they kind of resented that name, in a way, because it's, kind of like, it's kind of, an old person, like you say, when I went to school, I really had it tough, but then the wild strawberries come about 2010. And this is where you see the youth have always been involved in the change. And that's, so 2010 is when ECFA is coming.
That's right.
And
that's right.
I remember that
sunflower thing, right?
Yeah. Well, the sunflower comes about 4 years later. And that's the difference. There's a difference between the wild strawberries and the sunflowers, because I experienced both. And I remember being at a protest with the, when the wild strawberries were protesting, or it was in the beginning of ECFA on that, but the wild strawberries wanted to keep it balanced. Like a lot of people had come up from the South and they were kind of pro DPP or something. They said, hey, we don't want to get this too political. The sunflower was clearly political.
No, of course.
It was, definitely, they took over the legislature.
Yep.
Now, that also has an interplay of local politics between Ma Ying-jeou and Wang Jingping.
Of course.
Indirectly, but if remember, ECFA is going through, and or Ma is pushing ECFA. He's been pushing it since the 2008 when he was just elected. And Chen Yunlin came from the mainland and that. And I have an interesting story on that because I was here at the Grand Hotel when he was there, etc. But in that moment, when they took over Ma feels that Wang Jingping is not moving ECFA through the legislature fast enough. They're both KMT. Wang Jingping is Speaker of the legislature. And what they call the September strife, Ma tries to get Wang Jingping kicked out and get someone that is more amenable to his motion. He fails. He does it when Wang Jingping is in, I think, either Singapore or Malaysia at a wedding, and he tries to keep behind the back, kind of typical Ma thing in a way. But when the sunflowers come then, the following year, 2014, the only one that can give the police the order to take them out of the legislature is Wang Jingping. He's still Speaker. and he does not give the order. Now, if you notice, at that time, they went in to try and take over the control yuan, and that got squashed right away. But you know, and that, you know, that whole thing, Wang, in my mind, you know, is getting back at Ma. That, okay, you try to get rid of me, I still got my power, you know, and I'm going to go with these guys. So, you know, I was walking, you know, I didn't go into the legislature. I had many people that at that time I could have, but I didn't need to. But I walked around with all the protests and everything. And it was very almost celebratory. You know, it was very, very positive feeling down there. And the people were for it. Yeah, so and this is where, in this article that I recently wrote, that, you know, Ma was out of touch with the people. And out of touch, certainly, with the youth. So, and that's why, so the sunflowers are definitely different than the wild strawberries. But the youth, therefore, we're getting back to your original question. Sorry, I got sidetracked here. But the youth then, you know, have so far at least risen to the occasion. You know, if you look at it, the wild lilies, you know, the strawberries, the wild strawberries, and so they you know, they have their side, but they're still very conscious, I think, of you know, and you know, still, and they don't necessarily like military service. They'd like to get out of it, you know. One of my nephews had, you know, been able to get a nice cushy job. He was into computer stuff, and he did his military service working with the high-tech company and computer business and that. So that's a different area. But they're still, I think they're not as soft as people might think they are.
Well, that's I'm sorry to, but that's a really good point. I mean, I think, you know, the youth have always sort of risen up to the occasion, and it is easy to sort of just kind of be critical of them. But it is good to hear from you, Jerome, because you have a lot of interactions with younger people, and I think you have a lot more story to share. But I think we're pretty much out of time this time around, so we'll just have to invite you back for more stories, and I think we'll just stop right here, and then we'll say goodbye, and then we'll invite you back next time. Thank you very much.
Okay, right. I'm sorry I talked too much.
No, not at all.
Wonderful.
Those are great
stories.
That was a great story. Well, thank you, Jerome. And well, I guess that's that. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Stay tuned.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
哇，真的很感谢 Jerome 跟我们分享这么多的经验。其实他讲的那有一段时间，其实我不在台湾，那当然还是大约知道啦，就是说还是会关心台湾的事情。可是他其实从一个很第一人，然后可是他又是一个老美在台湾，所以他其实还是能够有一些某种程度的距离，我觉得真的很棒这样子。那大叔家你觉得呢？
我觉得他从某个角度，就是他因为时间的刻度够长，所以他这个三四十年在台湾，然后他也当然他自己也写作嘛，所以说他做一些深度的思考，然后有对这整个世代的一些进程有些了解。然后我觉得其中有一个点就是说，哦，对，他也觉得说每个世代就是有自己的一些挑战要去克服哈。我觉得这个是大家我们都知道，但是我觉得再次被提醒一下是挺好。然后重点是每一个世代它到那个时间点该出来的时候，似乎也就是大家会挺身而出。那所以因为他自己也教书嘛，所以他也还常常跟年轻人在一起，就是说他某种程度就是帮 因为大家最喜欢讲这个草莓族等等，他说对啊，但是在草莓族之前也有野百合，但是草莓族之后也有太阳花，都是在讲花的概念的话，就花跟植物。但是这个大家讲说这个所谓的草莓族，我觉得也许从他的观点是说，没有一个东西让这些草莓族能够展现他们的实力，那之后几年就有这个太阳花，所以我觉得。当然，我今天不是去评断他的对错跟他的什么东西，就是说年轻有他的想法，然后该是他们站出来的时间，他们自己找正确的时间，他们认为对的时间就会站出来。所以我觉得这对我来讲也是某种程度的，你说鼓励吗？算是鼓励吗？那个大组长，你也是年轻人，所以你有没有受到鼓励？
开玩笑，当你说我是年轻人的时候，我当然是受到鼓励了。
爽一下。
是呀，不过也很有趣了，我觉得，因为Jerome他刚才也提到说，他其实是台湾民选总统，现在是第4位了。他其实这4位也都有碰过面。那其实也欢迎大家上那个我们的脸书粉专上有一些他的那个跟总统们的照片，这样，所以我觉得他就是一个很有趣的。怎么讲？就是从到台湾的最政治，至少政治最上面，一直到下面的这种种的这个公民运动啊等等，他都有参与吧。那就像大叔家讲的，他的这个他提到是每个年代都觉得自己的这个年代是最伟大的，那这也听得懂啦。我当然是觉得自己的这个年代是最伟大的。不过话说来，就是时间到的时候都会站出来。那我觉得这个其实对我而言是一个我不敢说欣慰啦，因为欣慰就真的很阿伯的说法，可是觉得不会啊，这样子就还蛮有希望的。然后其实我后来有想过，就是说其实每个年代有自己的需求，所以就说倒也不要说每次就是要反攻大陆啦，因为天哪，你现在是想反攻大陆，其实就是这个年代不太对这样子。那其实我后来也自己在想啊，就是说除了比较政治面的东西，因为当然因为我们今天跟 Jerome 聊的时候是有我们的一个很大的主题是所谓的台湾 identity， 就是台湾怎么看自己啊，或者台湾人怎么看自己。那当然每个年代要不一样。那这个时候我就会讲一句比较非政治Alien 他还是一个政治相关啦，就是说是这个同性的婚姻这件事情，就是说我想不管每个人自己对同性婚姻这件事情的看法是什么，在一个从台湾至少年轻人或者甚至你去看世界潮流的角度，我不是敢不敢流行，而是说大家在这个时间点把这个议题是愿意拿出来，愿意这个很慎重的，然后很热闹的去讨论。我觉得还是那句话，就觉得台湾真的很棒。
耶、不错哦。
对，这个还是就是住台湾嘛，对不对？不需要把自己住的地方讲得很差这样子。对，好。那我们真的也很感谢大家的收听，我们今天节目大约到这边，然后当然就是要跟大家预告一下，下个礼拜就有一个非常非常精彩的节目，因为呢，这个大叔们终于受不了了，我们要开始抱怨很多事情，因为之前跟小朋友聊的时候，大家都很客气，然后他们也真的，说天真有点不好意思，可是他们问的问题简直就是完美的世界。不，我们下礼拜要开始抱怨工作碰到的鸟事，请大家多多期待。好，今天节目到这边，谢谢，拜拜，
拜拜。
谢谢大家收听本集的谢伯伯时间。在本集节目结束前，要来好好感谢我们最棒的幕后团队。我是 Ariel， 还有 Oliver、Hannah， 还有 Lalisa， 以及门面担当大叔嗓、大叔甲。如果你喜欢我们的节目，别忘了按下订阅和 5颗星的评论哦。另外也祝大家在疫情期间都能平安健康，那我们就下集见，拜拜。